Coming up, it's election time, and I'm getting political. Actually, it's really not, but the one issue we should all be voting on, I'll unveil that. And then a quick look at the labor market. Let's go. Helping you win at work, I'm Ken. This is the Ken Coleman Show. Excited that you're with us. All right, it's election time. And I think it's time to have a very serious conversation about what it is that we should all actually be united around. And this is directly related to our pocketbook today. So this is actually a political issue, but it is directly related to our own individual bank accounts. Our financial stability, our financial future. And I'm going to reveal very simply the one issue that we should all be voting on. This issue should unite, not divide. On the left, on the right, in the middle. And it's very serious. And, you know, I pay attention to what's going on in the political world. I come from that world way back in my 20s. And this issue needs to be talked about. And we have something that we can do about it. So here we go. The single issue is not a social issue. The single issue is not a foreign policy issue. The single issue is not an immigration policy. The single issue that every voting American should unite around and make it the primary thing that we are focused on is quite simply the national debt. I don't think that we, the people, have a firm grasp of how serious the national debt is. We are barreling towards $35 trillion in debt. And I think most people go, this doesn't matter. I'll tell you, at Ramsey Solutions, we talk about personal debt. And so we probably should be talking about the national debt, because the national debt does, in fact, affect all of us, every one of us. And so I'm going to lay out for you. And by the way, folks, get your Pepto-Bismol out. Get your milk of magnesia out if you're on the older side of things. Get your Tums, get your Pepsid AC. I don't care what you use, but this should, in fact, cause some uncomfortability. And then I'll tell you what we, the people, can and should do. So here we go. 5 factors, 5 debilitating impacts of the United States defaulting on the national debt. Because we have multiple countries that we owe money to. And some of you are going to try to simplify this. I could see it now in the comments. Uneducated people who think they're really smart and want to take a shot at me, which I can handle. My ribs are Teflon. You're going to say, oh, they never would do this. They would never do this. They're all leaning on each other. It's fine. It's not going to happen. And I think we all just think, you know what? Congress, the president, if we really get in a bad situation, well, they'll cut a deal and figure it out. Doesn't work that way. By the way, go throughout history and just take a look at how many times wars have been fought over finances. I don't think most people realize it. I think a lot of people think faith and power and all that. Okay. Just do your homework. Do your homework on how many wars start over finances. Okay, here we go. What would happen if the American debt is defaulted on? What happens if other countries call those notes and say, we want our money? What happens to you? Because I think we think this national debt thing is just this weird thing we can't understand. So what happens to us? Here we go. No particular order, but these are 5 outcomes that would be devastating to you, to me, and to all of us, and why we should do something about it. 1 is interest rates. Interest rates would spike. They would absolutely go through the roof. Why? The investors in America, the people who loaned us money, would demand higher returns because of all of the risk and all of the defaulting. It's just like any other loan to debtor relationship. And that would increase the borrowing costs for our government. Businesses, consumers, we're talking about crazy crush on anybody who's carrying debt. Number two, the stock market would probably experience extreme volatility and decline, a retraction. Why? Because investors are going to flee to safer assets. So they start selling things off. Now we pause here for a minute. Some of you go, well, I don't play the stocks very much. You got a 401k? I mean, how many of you remember when the stock market went through a really big crush a few years ago and people started paying attention to their 401k and they're like, my retirement savings, right? And that's why we tell people, it's a roller coaster. Stay on the roller coaster. You try to get off the roller coaster in the middle of the ride, you get hurt. But this is not a roller coaster situation. We're talking about a devastating crash that millions and millions of people never recover from. That's what happens, folks. Number three, how about government services? A default could force our government to cut spending on essential services. They just don't have the money. So now you're not talking about political maneuvering here. We're talking about just absolute fire sale. That's going to affect things like Social Security, Medicare, military salaries. Think about all of the government programs, the federal government programs that people actually rely on to get through the day. This is going to have a direct impact on that. Next. So we're talking about government services. That would affect a lot of people. How about this issue of inflation that we've been dealing with? Inflation is going to skyrocket. It's going to skyrocket. Why? When you see contraction across the economy and the demand goes up, but the supply is so low, that's what drives inflation. And then finally, let's talk about the scariest of all of those factors is actually unemployment. When you start talking about the four factors I just went through, reduced consumer spending is going to be a part of that. Companies are going to have to lay people off, fire people. You're talking about Great Depression era stuff here, where people are standing in food lines, people standing in lines just to try to get a day's work. This is all real. Now, I know this sounds incredibly dark, and I'm not trying to be dark, but I'm saying as adults, we the people have got to say, wait a second, our federal government, we are already heading towards another potential government shutdown. You're going to hear about it. We're coming up on another one. Why? Because Congress can't agree on a budget. We have no balanced budget amendment. And so what do? They kick the can down the road. They keep kicking the can down the road. And then it gets to a point where they say, okay, what do we do now? Well, what we're going to have to do is we got to come up with a new makeshift spending resolution, right, to keep things going. And what do? They borrow more money. You hear the term, the debt ceiling. So what do? They lift the debt ceiling. They basically go, okay, we are allowing ourselves as your representatives to borrow more money. And thus the debt increases. Folks, what can we do about it? I'm telling you, we, the people, need to demand of our representatives, our congressmen and our senators and our governors, because this is a budget issue. And in many states across the country, their state constitutions require that the budget is balanced. In other words, you don't have more expenses than you do revenues, tax dollars. And so we have got to have a balanced budget amendment. This is a constitutional amendment that would require the federal government to balance its books. Folks, that's it. And so you can do your homework. I'm not going to do a history lesson or a civic lesson here on how you actually get a constitutional amendment done. But it takes massive, massive citizen rising up to their leaders to say we are voting in support of this. And through the vote, you can actually get a constitutional amendment. And we need a constitutional amendment above all, anything else, to actually balance our budget. Because our future, our livelihood is hanging in the balance We cannot keep this up. We cannot keep this up. I saw something earlier today. I'll share this last piece, and then we will move on from this topic. But I saw this morning, and I got to pull this up. Alex, you just are not going to believe this. I just saw it on social media. I'm pulling it up. Here it is. You ready for this? 76%. Listen to this, folks. 76% of all personal income tax last month went to servicing the $34 trillion national debt we have. Did you hear that? The government is funded by our tax dollars. Did you hear that, young Nate? 76% of every American's income tax dollars went to pay the interest on the American debt. This is like your credit card. Imagine 76%, Alex, of your income going to pay interest on your debts. Folks, did you catch this? I mean, I'm trying to stay calm here, so I'm going to drop my voice and regulate. It's 24%. America's living off of 24% of our income. Folks, do you think that I'm Chicken Little right now? I'm not. I'm actually pretty calm. I'm exhausted. I've been traveling. I've got no sleep. I could fall over if I wasn't talking. I'm as calm. My pulse rate, Bob, is as calm as it can be. But could you imagine me telling you have to live off of 24% of your income? This is what we're doing in America. Folks, we got to wake up. And here we are in an election year. And I know I'm not going to start some national movement with this, but I felt like I told the team, I feel like I got to address this. Because I feel like, if anything else, I want to educate everybody who's watching and listening to this. We do collectively have the power to get a constitutional amendment to balance the American budget. And folks, if we don't, we are literally now saying, okay, we're cool, Congress, with you mortgaging my future, my kids' future, my grandchildren's future. It's that serious, folks. It's that serious. That's the issue we all ought to be voting on. And by the way, I think liberals and conservatives and libertarians and non-denominational or non-independent, we can all agree on that. Fix it now, please.
Hey folks, I want to tell you about Aiden. He started at Bethel Tech 2 weeks after graduating high school, and less than a year later, he's 19 and working as a full-stack software developer. He loved the idea of being able to work at his own pace, but what he really thought was cool was Bethel Tech's faith-based learning environment and being with classmates who had a similar worldview. Now, if this is you, or if you have a son or a daughter that's looking for the next step out of high school, and they may be tech-minded, at least interested, you need to talk to Bethel Tech. Listen to this. Fortune Magazine named them as a top 10 best UX UI bootcamp for 2024. And right now, they're offering you 10% off because you listen and watch The Ken Coleman Show. They also allow you to pay cash, and I know you'll like that. Go to betheltech.net/Ken Coleman for details. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey, if the show is helping you in any way, or you believe it could help someone you know, help us out. Spread the word. You are the greatest marketing strategy of all time. If you're listening to a podcast version of the show, give us a follow and a 5-star review and share. If you're watching on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share. All right, so we got a real shift here going on in the job economy. I do a lot of media, from television to radio. And I'm constantly asked, how would you describe the job market? I was in Los Angeles yesterday, and I was on KTLA, big station there, and the reporter said, "What's your take on our current job market?" So I think I'll answer that for you all, and then we'll get into this very interesting trend. So the current job market is stable. Healthy are two terms that I would use, but it's also changing. It is changing. And the question becomes, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, will we be able to say the same thing? So where we are today, first, little bit over 4% unemployment. Still, we're talking historically low numbers. Okay. So that's a good thing. But the number's ticking up. One of the things to be a little bit concerned about, something that I'm paying attention to, is the percentage of the jobs that have been added, and the numbers have been low when we look at monthly payrolls and we look at the economy. Is the economy adding jobs? So, for instance, we've got a presidential election coming up, and presidential candidates, pundits, they're going to focus on jobs always as kind of an economic indicator as to how an administration should be judged. Okay. So when we see these job numbers coming out, one of the things that looks a little soft and is something that I'm telling the media that I'm watching and a little concerned by is that the largest percentage of new jobs that have been added over the last few months have been government jobs. Now, the reason that concerns me is because that's not sustainable. You can't just keep pumping government jobs out. It just doesn't, you run out of money. That's taxpayer-funded employment, okay? The other reason that I'm concerned by that is that's not going to drive the economy. Small businesses, as they grow and as they employ people, that's what drives our economy, not government jobs. So I look at that and I go, this shows me that we're seeing a bump in unemployment, and we're also seeing a reduction in jobs being added by the corporate and small business parts of our job economy. Those two factors together, if those two trends continue 3 months, 6 months from now, you might have a not so great job market. But as we sit here today, it's stable. It's stable. It's not great. It's not bad. It's stable. So that's where we stand today. How did we get there? I just want to go back for a brief moment. How did we get there? Well, we got there because coming out of the pandemic, we saw a massive, massive bump in jobs created and incomes attached to those jobs. Then it created the Great Resignation. We're going to talk about that in just a second. So we got overheated. And so inflation was spiking. Why? Because of the Great Resignation. Okay. So more jobs were spun off coming out of in the pandemic. And so companies were going, I need somebody. So they go to Alex and they go, we need you. And we want to entice you to leave company A and come work with us. So what do? They offer Alex a pay bump. We'll get into that detail in a second. He goes, okay, that feels good. I'm going to do it. So he jumps. Okay. So then now we got company A. Company A has a hole they got to fill because Alex just left. Does this make you uncomfortable? I'm using you as an example. Okay. And so what do? So now they go, I got to get somebody to fill Alex's role. So they go somewhere else and they go, we got to get you to come over here and we're going to pay you more to come over here. Does everybody see how this works? Real simple economics. It's called musical chairs, but the demand goes up. All right, so that was a huge driver of inflation. So what does Jerome Powell and the Fed do? They do what the Fed has done for decades. He comes out and he says over and over again, hey, we need to see interest rates go up and try to cool the consumer demand, cool inflation. And what is an outcome of that is, and he said this over and over again, and I reported it on the show, you're going to see unemployment go up. So, all right, that sets us up for where we are right here, right now. That's where we are. That's how we got there. Now, what's going on? Here we go. This is a Fox Business article. And now Bank of America economists have come up with a new term, Alex. Instead of the Great Resignation, we are now in the Great Hesitation. And by the way, we've been telling you this. The number of workers moving from job to job is about 3% on average as of May. This is a pretty good drop from mid-2022 when it was nearly 3.75%. Now, you think that 0.75% is not very much, but it's significant when we talk about people and a massive number. Okay? So during the Great Resignation, when we had over 4 million people per month were leaving their jobs, the median pay raise the job hoppers received was above 20%. You remember that? I mean, we were telling you that. We're like, man, people are getting 20% bumps. Whoa. Now, as of May 2024, Bank of America reports that that figure has fallen to 10%. Okay. And this figure is actually below 2019 levels. So if you go back pre-pandemic to 2019, people were getting more than a 10% pay bump on average when they left. Okay. Or in the median, I should say, not on average. Okay. So it's really, really interesting. And what's going on is now job hoppers are going, I don't know where this thing is going. The economy, we've got an uncertain election. Everybody's kind of always waiting to see what's going on there. Companies aren't hiring at the rate they were hiring. They aren't offering these bumps. So people are going, do I want to move for 10%? That's essentially what's happening. Now, the largest slowdown in the job to job, so I'm moving from here to here, the largest slowdown is for middle and higher income earners. Here's what the good news is. Lower income Americans are seeing the strongest pay raise for job change. And that is largely because of the hourly wage component in those type of jobs where, again, not the most desirable jobs, that's why they're lower income. And so there's still a demand from the employers to say, I need somebody to fill this spot. So you're seeing lower income workers having the biggest bump. But in the middle income, and this is the key point, and the white collar, the higher income jobs, understand this. The pendulum of power has swung back to the employer. People aren't walking in going, I'm demanding 20% or I'm out. That's not happening. And so pay attention to this. Why do I tell you this? Because the landscape is changing. And so the easy money, the easy transition to something else is not there. You've got to be very smart. Please pull the boat up to the dock. Don't jump from one boat. Just whee and try to swim your way out there. I think you got to be very, very careful. So there you go. There's an update on where we are in the job economy. You can still get it, and I'm here to help you get it. But it's not as easy as it was. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Ken Coleman Show. Let's get to a coaching call. Vancouver, Washington is where we go next. Carson is there. Carson, how can I help you today?
Hey, Ken. Honored to speak with you today. Just dive right in here.
Yeah, man. What's up?
Took your Get Clear career assessment there, and I'm just kind of stuck in a bubble. I've been doing the same kind of work for most of my life, and some days I love it. Some days I'm wondering what I should be doing different, or if I should move on, or if I should dig in and stay in this industry.
Tell me, describe the days when you love it. What's happening?
So I'm a heavy equipment mechanic, mobile heavy equipment mechanic for a mid-sized construction company. And a good day for me is when I fix everything that I set out to fix. And a bad day is when I quote unquote fail at that. Super overthinker, perfectionist on everything. So I hold myself to a high standard with my work and put a lot of my identity into my work, I would say.
Yeah.
Kind of raised old school.
Yeah.
So
that's a very interesting answer. I didn't expect to hear that. And you know what else I didn't expect? I didn't expect for you to coach yourself so well. I might be able to pull out the imaginary cig and smoke it for the rest of this call, because I feel like you're on top of it and you've already identified for me what I'm supposed to identify. And you know what I'm talking about, don't you?
I do. Yes.
How many days in the month do you love? Days of work do you love versus the ones you're like, what am I doing with my life?
That is very, very, it's kind of a roller coaster for me.
Right. Take a guess. This is, I don't need you to be super accurate. I just, let's take a 4-week month and we got 5 days. So we're talking about 20 days, right? Did I do my math right? 4 weeks,
Yes,
5
sir.
days a week.
Yep.
So out of the 20 days, just ballpark, gut, what do you think? How many out of 20 do you love? The way you just described it.
10 or less, Ken. 10 or less.
Okay, so we're hovering at 50%.
Yes, sir.
So that sucks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because I think you've diagnosed what's really going on. There are just some days where, because it's a dadgum machine and a complex machine, that it's going to take more than a day to fix it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And is that your fault?
No, it's not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, the question is this just in your head, or is there something else? Because right now, it feels like it's in your head. And let me follow that track. Let's say that one of those days, you're digging into this problem, you can't figure it out. You think you got the solve, you try it, it doesn't work. It takes you a day to just figure out what you did wrong, and then it's another day. Maybe it's 2 or 3 day fix. Does that ever happen?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you feel at the end of that, whether it's day 2 or day 3, when you actually do finally get it fixed? Is that one of the 10 days that you love?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I think it's kind of human nature to
Right.
be super stoked when you finally solve that
Right.
problem. And
So it feels, here's what I'm asking. If we were to move you to another role, would that same issue follow you?
I've thought about that quite a bit. I think it probably would.
And I'm asking this unintelligently. I really don't know the answer to this. Are there other things that you could fix that would not be as complex, and conceivably you would get that rush every day because you were going to be able to fix that every day, and thus you wouldn't find yourself in that over analytical beating yourself up because you didn't solve the puzzle?
Probably. I'm sure there are.
I wonder if that's not the play.
It could be, but then I'd get in my head about that and like, oh, you compromised.
You're doing too easy of a puzzle.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. It's not
Okay.
a challenge at that point.
Carson, I'm trying to encourage you here. I think it's all in your head. I really think that there's something going on in your life, probably your past, that has created a narrative that when you're going through the natural struggle or the natural tension, maybe let's call it tension, of solving a puzzle. Because I don't like jigsaw puzzles. I really don't. And
Yeah.
I don't like them because I don't like solving those type of problems.
Sure.
But if I did like solving those problems and I got frustrated trying to solve the jigsaw puzzle, I kind of have to go, well, wait a second. I keep getting to frustration as I'm trying to solve this thing, but gosh, there's elation when I finish it. And so through the nature of trying to get a million pieces into one beautiful picture, well, what am I doing? Why am I allowing frustration to win the day when there is no elation unless I navigate frustration?
Right.
Is this helping at all? And I'm not looking for validation. I'm asking, are we on something here? Because I think that's what's going on.
No, I believe you got her there.
So here,
that's
if
something.
Because if you settle for an easier puzzle, if you settle for the match game, then you're bored out of your skull. You're like, I don't want to play.
I'll be miserable.
I don't want to play the match game. This is a game for 4-year-olds. Yeah, I saw the
Right.
duck here. I saw the giraffe here. Yeah, there's the giraffe match. That's you working on a lawnmower.
Right.
Am I right?
You're correct. Yep.
Like, I can't get my lawnmower to start right now, Carson. And so I gave up on it. And I've been having somebody cut my lawn for 3 years. It's fantastic.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's a true story. True story.
I
have Alex has been over to my house. I have a postage stamp of a yard in the grand scheme of things. Nathan, you've been to my house. It's not a very big yard, and my lawnmower stopped working a few years ago. And I kicked it around for literally 20 seconds. I thought, well, I have no idea. This is immediately for me, Carson, a puzzle that I have no desire to solve because I can't solve it. If you came over to my house tonight and I said, Carson, take a look at this thing, you would literally go, pfft. Well, you wouldn't because you're a nice guy. But inside you'd be making fun of me. And you'd go, all right, get out of the way. Move. Move. No, I mean, mentally you would. You'd be like, I'll solve this in about 17 seconds. Okay.
Well, not
right?
always, but yeah.
Yeah, but I'm having some fun with this to go, you're a guy who wants to solve the big problem. So guess what? Frustration and unique challenge and frustrating challenge is a part of the deal. It's the price of admission. Get over it. That's what I'm trying to say.
All right.
You with me?
I'm with you.
So here's what I actually think. I don't think you need professional advice at all. I think you need to go see some counseling. I would call my friends at BetterHelp. I really would. I do 1 or 2 sessions with somebody at BetterHelp. That's why I endorse them. You just talk through this perfectionism. Talk through this beating yourself up. Get somebody to give you some fresh perspective. Let's dive in. I think that will really help you. And then when you're dealing with the natural tension of solving the puzzle, you don't look inward and go, what's wrong with me? I'm such a bonehead. I should have figured this out by now. Does that sound familiar to you?
Oh, yeah. Every day.
Yeah. All right, hang on the line. I'm going to have Kelly connect you to our friends at BetterHelp, and I think that's the play for you. I really do. Thank you for the call, my man. That's honest and transparent stuff, and that's what we all need to do. Carson, we need you, man, and you need the difficult puzzles to feel alive. Step into it. Don't run from it.
Thanks for listening to The Ken Coleman Show. For more, you can find the show on demand wherever you listen to podcasts and watch the show on YouTube. You can also find Ken across all social media by following @Ken Coleman.